For as long as I can remember, I have been a fan of horror movies, and over the many years, I've seen some great ones, some awful ones, but every now and then, I come across a movie that makes me wonder what in the hell I just saw. Hi everyone, Hyde again, and today I want to do something a little different than a traditional review. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 strange horror movies that either made me feel weird, disturbed, or uncomfortable. Before we begin our descent into the depths of the eccentric and eerie, I want to point out that this is by no means a top 5 strange or weird movies list. As a result, the movies are also not in any particular order either. All of these movies are so unique and vastly different from one another that trying to compare and place them in the same sequential order would be insulting to the films themselves. Also, some of these movies are foreign and consequently are subtitled. This doesn't bother me at all, but if subtitles are a turnoff for you, well, you've been warned. And now that we have got that out of the way, let's jump right into the creepy and weird. First up is Shaitan, a 2006 French movie about a pact with the devil. The movie begins with some friends who go out for a night on the town who meet another young partygoer who invites them to her home in the country. However, the caretaker of this house has a peculiar interest in them, and over the course of the movie his behavior becomes more erratic, spooky, and violent. The friends must decide whether they are just overreacting or perhaps there is something very real and evil about to happen as the clock winds down to midnight. While the plot of this movie can easily be considered cliché, this movie sets itself apart from its peers due to its unreasonable creepiness. There are more than a few scenes that will definitely get under your skin: frightening dolls, menacing locals, and a disturbing family. But the most creepy aspect of this film is the character Joseph, the housekeeper, played masterfully by Vincent Cassel. His performance alone will send chills through your spine, and has without a doubt convinced me to never accept an invitation to stay at an isolated farm ever. I have actually had people walk out on this movie when I showed it to them because they couldn't tolerate the sheer creepiness of it. So definitely not for the weary, but if you are up for a challenge, Shaitan is worth it. Next we have Deathbed, The Bed That Eats, a lost film from 1977 in which the title very accurately tells the plot of this movie. Whereas most films about demonic possessions feature humans as the possessed, this unique horror entry instead has a bed become possessed by a demon. And yes, this bed eats people. And that's about it. It's not very good, and only keeps the audience intrigued by its wild and ridiculous villain, which is, as the title implies, a bed. But for the time, this is probably the singular most strange horror movie I have ever seen, and in some ways perhaps even a pioneer. I doubt without this movie Deathbed, there would be no Microwave Massacre, The Lift, Rubber, or The Mangler. And if for nothing else, this movie deserves credit for that. I mean, you have to be seriously wanting to watch a movie like this to be able to sit through the entire film. And even then, you will probably end up being disappointed or worse. But if you are looking to see one of the first modern surrealist horror movies, then look no further than Deathbed. No weird horror movie list would be complete without mentioning a horror movie from Asia, and that's exactly what Evil Dead Trap is. This little known movie from Japan in 1988 is one that barely hit my radar earlier this year, but it shocked me in the best way. The plot of this movie begins simply enough, with a camera crew embarking on an investigative story about snuff films being made and distributed to various media outlets. To no one's surprise, the crew begins to die in gruesome ways while being filmed by an unknown person or persons. But there are 2 reasons why this movie is on this list. One is the gore and violence. Evil Dead Trap has some of the coolest and most violent killings I've ever seen for this era. They are brutal, ruthless, and creative. The other and more prevalent reason Evil Dead Trap is on this list is because of its completely baffling and insane ending. Not only does the ending ramp up the graphic violence, but the final act doesn't even seem to come from a field, it seems to come straight from the hot dog stand. I was completely unprepared, and this movie left me stunned. If you are wanting to truly check out something that is going to push your limits on violence and insanity, Evil Dead Trap is that movie. This next movie comes to us all the way from Russia, and that is 2006's Visions of Suffering. I can only guess at the plot of this movie. And honestly, I'm not even sure there is one. Upon first viewing, this movie will assault your visual senses and leave your brain tired and confused. None of the characters are given specific names, only being referred to in the credits as Man in the Black Beret, and other similar generic descriptive names. This alone makes it extremely difficult to follow any plot that this movie might have. But then this movie goes even further and doesn't bother to give a coherent story to follow either. This made the already 2-hour-long movie seem even longer. It wasn't until after reading an interview with director Andrei Askanov that it sort of kind of made sense. He wrote the movie while under a self-imposed lockdown for weeks where he did nothing but take massive doses of hallucinogens and wrote down all of the terrifying things he saw. And when you watch this movie as though it were a 2-hour drug-fueled nightmare, it kind of works. Visions of Suffering is by no means a great or even good movie, but it is exceptionally weird, both visually and thematically. This is a movie which, for better or worse, I will never be able to forget. And if you decide to watch it, I don't think you will either. And last but certainly not least, we have We Are the Strange from 2007. Directed by M. Strange, this film uses stop motion animation, CG artwork, and green screen effects to build a sinister fantasy world. Very similarly to the aforementioned Visions of Suffering, the plot of this movie is extremely confusing. And as far as I can tell, it has something to do with ice cream and giant robots. While the plot of this movie is barely comprehensible, the nightmarish world this movie creates is immensely disturbing. The visuals are striking, unique, and at times can be incredibly creepy. The ability to use a combination of various methods and technologies so effectively is impressive. It can be argued that We Are the Strange is a highly ambitious and experimental film, but it's more likely that M. Strange just wanted to make a weird movie. The lack of a coherent story or characters can make We Are the Strange a difficult journey, but the visual effects and animation together with the interesting production techniques more than make up for that. So guys, those are the 5 weird movies on this list, and if you are into the bizarre and you haven't seen one or more of these, they are worth checking out. And I would love to hear from you. What are some of the strangest movies that you've seen? Leave them in the comments below. And that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe so you won't miss out on any future videos. And I hope to see you next time on Highs Horror. Thanks for watching.